This episode is brought to you by Pure Energy Apothecary, a woman-owned skincare and wellness brand founded by my friend Dawn Lancaster. Dawn and I go way back, deep diving into essential oils. We shared a passion for creating intentional products, just like the ones Dawn continues to craft today with Pure Energy Apothecary. When Dawn said she wanted to offer you 20% off Pure Energy products, I was thrilled. Pure Energy products are handmade in Vermont with ingredients you can pronounce, and they smell amazing. They are rooted in real aromatherapy. Visit pureenergyvt.com and use the code PURECHANGE for 20% off just for being a part of the Change Happened community. Pure products, pure purpose, pure energy. Welcome to Change Happened, Then What? Where in Season 2, you'll hear voices drawn here by one thing: change. Each episode brings you a story of hope, unpolished and unfiltered, where stories got messy, where people questioned everything, but also where they found a way forward. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own next steps in their words. Because when life breaks open, that's often when the most beautiful truths finally have room to grow. I'm your host, Heather Holt, and I am so happy to have you here today. Before we get into this week's story, a quick shout out for last week's Change Challenge question. If you answered Dale Jr. for last week's question, your name went into the drawing for a super soft trucker hat or tee. And this month's winner is Angela in New Mexico. Angela chose a super soft trucker hat. Great choice. And she also answered Andy's question correctly about going to get his degree from Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you to everyone who participated this month. It was absolutely amazing. I loved reading all your guesses and hearing your thoughts. Make sure you stay tuned until the end of today's episode for this week's Change Challenge question, and you could be the next winner of your very own super soft tee or trucker hat. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Are you one of those people who came into this world with a gift of psychic abilities? I'm not talking about the crystal ball, smoky room, TV gypsy stereotype, or some over-the-top movie character. I'm talking about the true meaning of the word psychic. Living from your soul, being deeply sensitive to energy, emotion, and information that goes beyond what our five senses can explain. That knowing in your body before the words are spoken. That feeling in your gut that won't let you look away. But what if you had these abilities and you didn't really want to be here? What if the only thing you knew about life was that you had to fight to survive? Because that's what you were taught, and walking away wasn't an option. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Terrie. Terrie was born to teenage parents that wanted to make it on their own. She grew up in a world where chaos felt normal and survival was the lesson of the day. She carried these psychic gifts long before she knew what to call them. Seeing and sensing more than any child should have to hold. At 8 years old, her life could have ended. She was hit by a car, or as she'll tell you, she was touched by what she calls her angel in the car that didn't hit her. That moment became one of many turning points, the kind that you can only recognize when you look back and connect the dots. And then, years later, Terrie finally found herself and her voice behind the wheel of a black BMW convertible. In this episode, you'll hear how she went from fighting to simply exist to living a truly authentic life, guided by intuition, hard-won healing, and the courage to stop running from who she really is.
And so I found myself fighting to survive. Yes, at 8 years old, I am taking rocks and sticks because my dad told me I could after he kept coming home after he was gone for 2 or 3 months as a long-haul truck driver and telling me I was looking like ground beef every time he came home. And he says, I don't care, whatever it takes, you need to fight back. Where on the other side, my mom was telling me, Terrie, it's all your fault. What are you doing? I said, I'm just walking away. And I reclaimed my power through that. However, it taught me that I had to fight to survive. And so I found that through that, as a young child, I really didn't want to fight anymore. So I found myself not wanting to be in the life. So at the age of 8, my sister was sick. We decided we were going to go across this busy street and get some candy on the other side. And I did not make it when we came back. I was struck by a car and my hands didn't go out in front of me fast enough before my face hit the concrete. I ended up breaking the condyles, both of them, in my jaw. I lacerated my liver, bruised my spleen, and dislocated my left arm. And without the help of an angel behind the car that hit me, the gentleman got out of the car, walked over. He was a doctor and gave me a tracheotomy right on the street because I was bleeding from my mouth, my nose, my eyes, and my ears, and I was choking on my own blood.
I've had a few experiences in my own life where I say angels showed up just in time to pull me out of something that could have gone very differently. And when moments like that happen, you can't help but wonder how or why. Why this moment? Why this protection? Why me? There's this quiet gratitude that settles in your chest, a knowing that something beyond you stepped in. And for Terrie, that moment came when she was only 8 years old. After the accident, Terrie spent an entire month in the hospital. Imagine being 8 years old and having your whole world suddenly shrink down to a hospital bed, bright lights, and waiting for somebody to tell you when things would be okay again.
They wired my jaw shut, and once they took the wire off, my jaw was locked. It was frozen. And so then between the age of 8 and 14, I found myself eating everything through a straw because the curve of a standard kitchen spoon would not fit into my mouth. That's how much I could not open my mouth. So I had to eat everything through a straw up to the age of 14.
When Terrie tells me she had to eat everything through a straw until she was 14, my whole body reacts because I know what it's like as an adult to have to drink through a straw because half of my face is paralyzed. And that's hard enough. But to be a child, to be healing, to be growing, and to have your mouth wired shut for that long, I can't even imagine the patience, the frustration, and the strength it took. And yet Terrie talks about it with this softness, like she's made peace with a version of herself she didn't even know she was becoming. But in those years between 8 and 14, something bigger was happening that Terrie didn't even have the language for then, but does now. She was leaning into her intuition, her sixth sense, her inner knowing. She didn't know to call it psychic or intuitive or energetic, but what she was doing without even realizing it, she was becoming a master manifester. While other kids were trying to fit in or figure out where to sit at lunch, Terrie was shaping her reality. She was deciding what she wanted. She was moving toward it with this fierce, quiet certainty. Not because life made everything easy, but because life had taught her the exact opposite. She grew up supported by lack of stability, lack of guidance, lack of emotional safety. So she did something brilliantly unconventional. She turned the word no N-O into know, K-N-O-W. No didn't stop her. No informed her. No meant, now you know what you're reaching for. Now you know what direction you're moving toward. Now you know what you need to call in. And once Terrie knew, she went after it every single time, with that same intuitive certainty she'd carried since childhood. Only now it shaped a purpose and a fire behind it.
I decided every time my mom said N-O, I said, I don't want to live like this anymore. So I started turning that N-O into K-N-O-W. I wanted to go to camp, and my mom said N-O, and I said K-N-O-W. So there was a statewide, in the state of Maryland, that for all of the elementary schools, if you wrote an essay, I wrote an essay in all of the state of Maryland, and I won. I got to go to camp.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to camp. And then miraculously, this wonderful angel-like couple came to my parents and said there was this special surgery in the state of Florida for children that are special, that need surgery, and it's free, but you have to live in Florida. So my mom moved us to Florida, and I had the surgery.
You can still hear it in her voice today. The way she lights up when she talks about going to camp back in elementary school. That pure excitement. That feeling of finally getting to do something just for her. And when she tells me how her parents packed up all 3 children and moved their entire family to live in Florida just so Terrie could have the surgery she needed, if that isn't manifestation, I don't know what is. A little girl wanting to feel normal, wanting to belong, wanting healing so deeply that the universe rearranged itself and her family to make it possible. We talked a bit more about how this thread of manifesting, intuition, and quiet determination continued through her teen years and into adulthood. If you follow the pattern long enough, you realize Terrie wasn't just surviving. She was calling in every next step into her life, even when she didn't know that's what she was doing. But rather than me telling you, I want you to hear it in her words, because the way Terrie explains it brings a whole new layer of clarity into her journey. Give the gift of calm. Dear Sweet One lullabies are personalized, astrology-inspired stories set to soft, soothing music, each one handcrafted to bring peace and connection. Whether you're welcoming a new baby, searching for a meaningful gift, or simply craving a moment of stillness, these lullabies are a beautiful way to say you are loved. Visit changehappenedpodcast.com to order yours today.
Well, I found myself creating the life where most people would think it was fantastic. I was a director of sales for a large company making them millions of dollars, and I was miserable. I was with a partner for 14 years, and every day I found myself crying. And the last year was not just a little boo-hoo, it was gut-wrenching, because I was pouring so much into that relationship and not getting anything, not even 1/18 of what I felt I was giving in return to receive. Because in that 14-year relationship, I did not have a voice, because I lived in the limiting belief of what my grandmother and mother showed me, that I had to serve and service my mate. And so no matter what, you do whatever it takes to keep them happy, no matter what, even if you're not. And so that's why it ended up being so detrimental to me in the end, because I felt that I had no way out. And I have to tell you, I remember I was to get a new business car. So, I was director of sales, as I said, making them millions of dollars, and I had a company car, and he wanted to get me a new one, the boss. So my partner at the time said, I'll go with you to the dealerships. So we went to one, and he's at one end of the dealership, and I'm at the other. He's looking at sports cars, and I'm looking at business cars. And I'm like, what are you looking at sports car? We have two tiny kids. What are you doing that for? Oh, I'm just looking. He ended up purchasing a sports car without having any kind of conversation. It just appeared. And then I was like, wait a minute, what kind of relationship is this? 8 months later, I said to myself, you know what? I'm tired of living for everyone else. I love my children endlessly. Why can't I do something for me? Because at the time, I had the mom SUV, and here he is driving around a little sports car. We had separate everything, and I decided it's time for Mom to get mommy her car. So he came home one day, and in the driveway was the BMW convertible, and it sat four. The whole family could fit in my car. And I remember him coming to me when he came home that day, and he was, his car's in the driveway. And I said, isn't it awesome? And he said to me, you're going to take it back? And I said, no, that car is my voice.
After years, decades really, of being silenced, of working for other people, and doing what she was supposed to do, Terrie did something completely unexpected. She went out and bought herself a car. Not just any car. A car that would become a turning point in her life. Even though she didn't realize it at the time. In fact, she told me she never understood the magnitude of that moment until I asked her one simple question. When did you find your voice? See, when you work in the realm of energy, when you start to piece together your life through the lens of intuition and the body, certain moments carry a weight that goes far beyond logic. So when I asked Terrie, when did you find your voice? Because here's a woman who spent her entire life fighting for safety, fighting to be heard, fighting to simply exist. A woman whose childhood story involved injury, surgery, and years of mouth trauma, which connects directly to her throat chakra, the energetic center tied to communication, truth, expression, and the ability to speak your inner knowing. And in case you're new to chakras, here's a quick explanation. Chakras are believed to be the energy center in the body, which are associated with physical, emotional, and spiritual functions. When one is blocked or wounded, especially the throat chakra, it can affect your ability to speak up, express yourself, or feel heard. And now that Terrie works deeply with energy, intuition, and the body's wisdom, I knew there had to be a moment where everything shifted, when she finally broke the pattern of silence and stepped in to the life she's living now. Those kind of transformations don't happen by accident. Something always cracks them open first. And for Terrie, that black BMW convertible was the first spark, but not the last. Because before she could fully step into her new role as a healer, as an intuitive, as the woman finally living in her truth, there was still one more turning point waiting for her. And this moment might be the most powerful of them all.
So I found myself at the end. It was about 3 months before, and I did not want to be in this physical body anymore. I said to myself, if this truly is what love is, I'm out. Take me. I am done. So I woke up 3 a.m. I remember I looked right at the clock, climbed out of bed, and I tiptoed because I loved him so much. I didn't want to wake him up after 14 years. Climbed into the bathroom, laid on the floor, and I remember everything as if it was yesterday. The tiles were so cold. My eyes were closed, but I was seeing as if they were open. But I was expanded. I was in the state of thinness, if you want to call it that. And with my eyes closed, I could see stars so close around me that I could touch them. I was, and knowing that I was in the center of the universe. There was this dampness about me, and I knew that I was complete because I had laid on that floor and begged God to just simply take me away. I was done. I was ready. And when I felt that expanded state, I'm like, this is it. I'm done. I'm complete. I'm so happy. And as I was laying there, I heard 3 simple words: love will come. When I got those 3 simple words, I felt, oh my gosh, I now have something I can grasp onto to receive the thing, and the only thing I wanted in my life was love. And I was on a mission after that, but I was still in that relationship.
She was still in that relationship, but not for long. Because here's something you learn very quickly once you start leaning into your intuition. Once you find your voice, your real voice, you can't shrink yourself the way you used to. You can't unsee what you know, and you can't keep living in an old version of yourself that no longer fits. Terrie told me that once she stepped into that knowing, once she felt what it was like to actually listen to herself, there was no returning to a life, a relationship, or a version of her identity that didn't support her truth. So she left. And instead of falling apart, she dove headfirst into a world she didn't fully understand, but her soul recognized instantly. A world of intuition, energy, and a world of healing. She started taking classes, she learned to meditate, she studied how intuitive abilities work, how to hear, feel, and trust the signals that had been whispering at her since childhood. And slowly she began to see how all of this wasn't just for her healing, it was for her purpose. Terrie discovered she had a gift for helping other people who were, as she puts it, lost in loss. People whose grief left them directionless, disconnected, unsure of how to stand back up. And that path didn't come out of nowhere. It had roots reaching all the way back to her corporate years, when her family suffered a profound loss. Her grandfather passed away. Her sister was incredibly close to him. He had been like a second father to Terrie's nephew. So the grief hit hard and it hit deep. During that time, an intuitive stepped into their lives and helped guide them through the heaviness. She didn't take the pain away, but she helped them understand it, move with it, breathe through it. And Terrie remembers watching that unfold and thinking, there's something here. I don't know what it is yet, but I feel it. That moment was like a breadcrumb that would eventually lead her to the work that she does now. Because sometimes the person who showed up to guide your family through the darkness ends up being the spark that helps you guide others through theirs.
And so then it was the 5th anniversary of his death. And then that's when, here I am in corporate, met this gal who could talk to things she couldn't see. And I said, okay, I'm not going to let my sister get into this headspace as she now doesn't want to be here, because she was so close to him, but it was hard for her at every anniversary of his death. So I hooked up a 3-way call. Now, she brought in someone first. She says, I got to tell you, there's this other person coming. And so she said, this is your uncle. He sits at the end of your bed, and here's his little brown dog. And my sister's like, what? She's like, oh my God, that's Uncle Lou. Don't you remember the dog? I said, no, I don't. She remembered the dog. And then in pops my grandfather. Well, during that time, my sister had a lot of specific questions. Did you see the light? Did Grandma come and get you? Are you happy? Is Grandma there? I mean, all these specific questions that are really common when I had that moment. From listening to how my sister was acting prior to that call of being lost and lost, and then having an hour conversation, and then from there catapulted her in celebrating his life. Mm-hmm. So in that moment, I'm like, I want to save lives like that, because I truly felt that woman with those messages from my grandfather saved her life.
Terrie has lived a remarkable life to get to where she is today. Every twist, every hardship, Every intuitive whisper that she followed has led her to a place where she finally gets to live in balance, fully, authentically, and unapologetically herself. Now, she spends her days helping others do the same. As an intuitive healer, she guides people in reconnecting with their loved ones when that's what their heart needs, or simply reconnecting with themselves, their energy, and their inner truth. And she's put her wisdom into words. Terrie wrote a book called The Secret Power of You, and Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of The Four Agreements, had this to say about it: a wonderful guide full of important information for those of us who want to get out of their own way and live a life guided by their own intuition. I mean, that's not just praise. That's a calling. And Terrie, she's living it. I'll put all of her links in the show notes, as well as on her guest page at changehappenedpodcast.com, so you can explore her work yourself, and I really think you should. As our conversation came to a close, I asked her my two favorite questions. What makes you smile today?
I just did it. Breathing.
Breathing. Simple. But what a beautiful reminder. It sounds small, but only until you stop long enough to realize how sacred and essential that breath really is. We rush through life, forgetting that it's the one thing keeping us here, moment to moment. So let's take a deep breath together, right here, right now. And then I asked her the final question. What is one piece of wisdom that you want to leave with everyone today?
To learn to say, let me think about that.
Let me think about that? Not rushed, not people-pleasing or performing, just thoughtful. She isn't saying be rude or don't answer. She's saying don't abandon yourself in a hurry to respond. Be mindful, be honest, be less judgmental. With others, yes, but especially with yourself. We move so quickly through conversations and decisions that we often look back and say, I wish I would have said, or I wish I could have done. But if we had paused, if we had given ourselves permission to say, let me think about that, we might have gotten it right the first time. Terrie gives us a lot to think about in this episode. And personally, she brought me back to my own true self, to my center, to the place in me that remembers why I'm here today. I hope she brought you back to a little bit of your center too. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Now, head over to changehappenedpodcast.com to enter this week's Change Challenge question for your chance to win this month's drawing of a super soft trucker hat or a tee. What state did Terrie win the essay contest in to go to camp? While you're there, don't forget to sign up for the monthly newsletter where you'll get extras, behind-the-scene updates, and all the latest news about the show. Until next week, keep smiling. If this episode spoke to your heart, I'd love for you to visit changehappenedpodcast.com to join our monthly mailing list. It's also where stories like this continue, with blog reflections, more about each guest, and ways you can support the show. And if you've got 30 seconds, leaving a review or 5 stars helps more people like you find stories like this. Think of it as paying for your coffee at the local coffee shop. Change Happened, Then What? Is written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, with the loyal background vocals from my two sidekicks, Waylon and Dalton. Until next time, keep smiling and maybe let your dog produce your next big idea.
There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while. So smile.